See, I hope that the signal is a little bit better. Mr. Mashilo, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
All right. Mr. Mashilo.
I can hear you.
Okay, Mr. Mashilo, what is the SACP's position in terms of Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Now, I would firstly like to start with the two tenets of our policy positions in respect of international situations involving conflicts. Firstly, our position is that all conflicts should be settled through or resolved through peaceful means. And secondly, we are against all forms of international aggression. In this instance, the situation in Ukraine has a history which you discussed with your previous guest. There was a coup in Ukraine in 2014. That coup was supported by Western powers. Since that time, Ukraine was converted into a ground by NATO, particularly led by the United States of America, threatening Russia's security. And within Ukraine, there was some sort of a civil war against citizens in the East. And because of the atrocities that the regime was committing against the people, others were forced to even declare themselves independent republic.
When you say regime,
right now,
when you say regime, who are you talking about?
We are talking about the regime in Ukraine.
Okay, so you're saying the regime in Ukraine was engaged in a civil war with the separatist movements in Luhansk and Donetsk post-2014?
Yeah, you call them separatist movements. There is a population that speaks Russian because of the history of the Soviet Union and the geopolitical characteristics of that region. So after the neo-Nazis staged a coup in 2014, they launched a campaign against citizens in the East. This is why, one after another in their respective regions, some of those citizens were declaring themselves independent republics. Often when that conflict is discussed, there is less analysis of what is taking place in Ukraine itself, and why the people in Ukraine feel compelled to declare themselves independent republics. That happens because of NATO's expansion, led by the United States of America in that region, against the agreements entered into with the Soviet Union, which were inherited by Russia. However, saying that, we are not promoting war. We are against war. We are saying the conflicts internationally should be settled by peaceful means. And when we talk about war, we don't talk only about the gun sounds. We talk about what the United States has been doing in its leadership of NATO, engaging in minute preparation, expanding its sphere of influence and militarism in Eastern Europe, and in the process, causing the war that now we see emerging there. What we will say in this instance to all the parties affected there is, please de-escalate. We do not want any losses of life. We want that conflict to be resolved by peaceful means. Please return to negotiations. That is our key message.
But Russia did the invading, and there have been attempts to try and resolve the impasse and Russia's security concerns diplomatically. But Russia is the country that is shown aggression in this instance.
I like your motto as the SABC. When you report news, you say that you are independent and impartial. If you follow the minutes and the recordings of the United Nations Security Council, China came out there rejecting terminologies pushed by the United States and its allies. So we will not like to be caught in those terminologies. There is a military operation there conducted by Russia. As Russia is saying, the United States is calling it an invasion. So whatever term you choose may make you no longer to be impartial in that conflict.
All right.
That conflict did not start yesterday. It started in 2014 when there was a coup and NATO moved in, expanding eastward as part of the economic ambitions of the United States of America. And if I may emphasize, because we are talking about war here, it is important that we protect life. Allow me to emphasize once more that we are calling to all parties involved there to de-escalate the conflict, to return to the table to negotiate. Russia issued a statement today. They said they have been negotiating for 8 years. I'm sure you have also seen the European Union today. If I may return to the point that you raised, they said they are not interested in talking, okay? So it is important that we look at what both the sides are saying and we do not take sides because we do not want any further loss of life. People have been losing their lives in eastern Ukraine. So we have not had a conversation about that. We want to elevate that because those are human beings as well. You call them separatists, but they have lost life and many others have lost life. There has been a developing situation there. What we see is a culmination. It is an unfortunate culmination.
All right, so how would you then describe this military operation that Russia is on in Ukraine? What do you think is the purpose, and should they carry on, or do you think that they need to withdraw and have further discussions? What's the purpose, in your view, of this military operation that Russia's engaged?
I will start with the most important aspect, that all parties in that situation need to de-escalate the conflict, must return to the table and talk. This thing that the European Union said earlier today and the United States that they are not interested in talking is not acceptable. They don't live there. They do not experience the situation experienced by the people there. They must be promoting negotiations. They must not be the aggressors we have seen them being. And if I now return to your latest question, people in eastern Ukraine, facing the pressures that they face, declared themselves in several regions to be independent republics. Russia has said it has established relations with them. Russia has also said that it is facing a situation where its national security is threatened by the expansion of NATO. NATO must stop that expansion because it is an act of war. And when we say we are anti-war, we start with these acts of war that have led to the situation that we see now. We do not exclude those acts of war. Russia says that it is defending its national security. If I may take you back a little bit, there was a time a few decades ago when the Soviet Union established a missile presence in Cuba. You see, Cuba is outside of the United States. Do you know what the United States did? So you need to just look at that situation and compare to what Russia is doing against NATO's expansion using Ukraine as a launching pad. So all those activities have to stop.
Does Kiev and the people of Ukraine not have a say or a choice if they want to join NATO or not?
There were agreements. Remember that we are talking about a region that was one country in the past. Okay, it was a single country in the past. So there were agreements signed, there were compromises, letting other regions form part of Ukraine. And as the situation develops, new military tactics, particularly led by the United States of America, are unraveling those agreements, and other people are going back to the positions they were in before those particular agreements. So it is very important that while we do not take sides, At the same time, we say, please stop with the conflict. And by the conflict, we must not be one-sided. We must not be referring to Russia. In Ukraine, we must be saying to the regime, stop the atrocities and human rights violations against the people. In the United States, we must say to the United States, Ukraine is not part of your territory. Do not use it to expand, to threaten the national security concerns of Russia and other people. Europe, we must say, please also stop. We must call order on all sides. We must not be one-sided. And here we must be firm that it is the United States and Ukraine that started first, leading to the situation we see today. But despite that, we are saying, please, to all sides, to Russia, to Ukraine, to the United States, to its NATO allies, please stop and return to the table and ensure that the conflict is resolved by peaceful means. We don't want war.
All right, we've run out of time. If you could answer this very briefly. South African Communist Party, are you saying that you're against all forms of sanctions against Russia?
I'm sure you know I have not even mentioned the word sanction, because even sanctions are used as part of war. You know, Cuba is under sanctions. It is not under sanctions because it did anything wrong. It is under sanctions because an imperial power in the United States of America is using sanctions to fight wars. So when we say that please return to the table, we are not choosing any items in the agenda. All items must be on the agenda and must be resolved amicably and by peaceful means.
Mr. Mashilo, thank you so much indeed for giving us some insights and a perspective from the South African Communist Party on this issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.